Hello, Florida 9th and 10th grade violinists, and congratulations on taking the time to hopefully grow by watching this video on All-State Prep. Today I'm going to be discussing Kreutzer number 7, which is frequently listed as Kreutzer number 6 in some editions, but Kreutzer number 7 and also the prescribed excerpt from Beethoven's Egmont Overture. But as I'm sure you know, that is not your complete all-state audition, so you'll need to be careful to also prepare your scales and your sight reading. What I'm going to talk about for Kreutzer number 7 and also for Egmont sort of assumes you have a basic knowledge of the notes, bowings, and fingerings of these pieces. But if you're not there yet, I hope that these resources can also help you. For example, you want to just go listen to the video that I've recorded, you have an embedded feature in YouTube that allows you to slow those videos down without changing the pitch. So that's one way to help preparation. Also, for each of these video tutorials, I pull out a different concept. And in the 7th and 8th grade video, which is listed on the YouTube channel, the concept that I talk about first is just how to prepare something from scratch. So if you're looking for some ideas to just get yourself started, that might be helpful for you. But once you have a basic knowledge of this etude, the concept I wanted to pull out for this one was just use of bowing and rhythmic patterns, because I think Kreutzer number 7 very much lends itself to that idea. As you can see, it's almost completely grouped in groups of 3. So a logical thought would be to group rhythmic and bowing patterns in groups of 3. Now, why do we even bother with this? Technically, it can make things harder. And if you don't want to know what I mean, you'll see in a minute. But actually, that is part of the idea, is to explore these music, any piece of music that you're preparing, from as many angles as possible, and keep your brain engaged in as many different ways as possible with the music, so you learn it as completely as possible and soar in the performance. So as I mentioned, groups of 3 make a lot of sense with this one. If we were going to do a rhythmic group of 3, we could do something, for example, such as long, short, short, long, short, short, where the first note of each group is longer. If we were going to do that on the first bar of this etude, it would sound like this. Let's say I want to make the second note of every 3 grouping pattern longer. So short, long, short, short, long. That itself, all the way through this etude, is pretty challenging, especially when you get towards the end. But if you're looking for the next level, say you have a bowing and rhythmic pattern party with your friends, then this could be kind of wild and crazy. You could group in groups of 2, even though this is written in groups of 3, so it could be just long, short, long. Or you could group in groups of 4, since again these are basically 12 per bar, it still works. Here would be if you did the first note of every group of 4 long. Again, that gets harder as it gets later, but as you can see, if you can do that, then it becomes kind of a little bit actually quite easy by comparison to do it just straight. The same thing applies to bowing patterns. In fact, you can combine bowing and rhythmic patterns, but I'm just going to separate them for right now and keep the rhythm even under these bowing patterns. For me, the thing to keep in mind is whatever you're doing in print, you kind of want to do something different to keep it, again, learning from different angles. So since this is separate and actually articulated with a space, I would recommend slurring it. It will teach your left hand to be legato, even though your right hand is not. And in the edition printed by or given to us by the All-State Committee, you can see that, for example, in the second grouping of 3 in the first bar, they're encouraging you to put a 3 on both strings to place them to kind of get ready for that 5th. So if you practice with slurs, it kind of helps your hand remember to do that. So let's just slur in groups of 3 first. But you could actually move that slur over and still be in groups of 3. It would just be that you would start the slur on the second note of every pattern, like this. And just like the rhythmic patterns, you could do different kinds of groupings, such as, let's do a slur pattern that's actually a group of 4. Let's do 2 slurred and 2 up. So, as you can see, this is sort of an endless possible activity. I know we all have a little more time this summer, so maybe that'll help, but for me, if there's something that's bothering me or I'm just not getting it, what's really helpful is just to approach it a different way. Pick a different rhythmic pattern and find another path and learn it from a different angle. So I hope that helps you too. Just a quick word about the stroke, bow stroke. I frequently think about this etude as teaching martelé stroke, and I think that's a great use of this etude and something to hopefully talk about with your teacher. For this recording, I'm choosing to keep the stroke as opposed to more in the upper half for martelé. I'm actually keeping the stroke more in the middle, in the square of my bow, because the tempo is a little fast, at least for me, for martelé. So that, again, is just a choice that you can make for yourself, for your teacher. But what I would challenge you to think about is this, the fact that every note that you play has a beginning, middle, and end. And you want to be sort of conscious about how you're beginning and ending, especially a note. In the case of these notes, I would, of this etude, I would encourage the beginning of the note to be very clear and the end of the note to ring. So even though there's carets on this and it's prescribed to have a space, I'm not actively stopping the bow to create that space. So there's just one gesture per note rather than 2. If it were 2, it would look kind of like this. But I don't want to have an active stop. I think that disrupts the flow of the sound, especially at this tempo. So instead, I'm trying to have a ring at the end of my notes and not actively stop, just let it ring. So I hope that helps with Kreutzer number 7. Now as we move into Egmont, to me this is where things get even more exciting, because this is a piece that's designed to be played in a concert hall and intentionally tells a story. So it's something you want to think even more intentionally about in a piece like this. Do you know who Egmont was? Do you have any idea why Egmont chose to write about him? And do you have any idea why Beethoven in particular related to Egmont's story? I encourage you to look that up. I provide a link even in the PDF that accompanies this tutorial. Also very exciting about this piece of music is that it's written to be part of a larger group, be part of an orchestra. But that should inform our preparation as well. So if you're part of a large ensemble, rhythm is always important, but it becomes even more important. For example, if you look at that opening part of this excerpt at bar 25, you can imagine if each violin were a little off rhythmically, it would not work, it would not communicate as one voice the music. So we are extra careful to practice with the metronome. As a check, we can practice certainly with quarter notes, starting slowly and moving up. We can also practice with subdivisions. You can practice, again, with dotted half notes per bar. But I wanted to demonstrate one other way to practice rhythm that you might not have thought of, and that is to use the subdivisions in the long notes just to get the proportions. So, for example, we start with some 8 notes and then we have a long C. But one way that you might want to try practicing that is this, like this. So you can sort of see that you held at the right number of 8 notes for sure. In fact, second violins are actually playing some 8 notes while you're doing that. Long C in the first violins. Also important as part of an orchestra and learning an orchestra part is to really understand your role and how your part fits in with the orchestra. So I hope that you're listening to this on YouTube or wherever, recordings of Egmont. But I would also encourage you to play along with the recording. And if it's too fast, again, slow it down using the YouTube feature. But just for discussion's sake, I mean, we kind of start where we should start pianissimo because that's where the orchestra is before this excerpt. Before 25, we're down to pianissimo. And then we get to this long C, again, where we are not the principal voice. So while you are playing that, you should hopefully over time be able to hear who's playing that. I won't even tell you who it is because I want you to go find out. And we play a little more transparent sound because we're not the lead. We kind of come in and out as far as the lead, but where we start to really, the first violinist be in the lead consistently is the pickup to bar 43. We have a long series of this pattern, 3/8 notes and a downbeat. So, right? We call that a rhythmic motive. And just for sort of fun, can you think of any other piece where Beethoven used that rhythmic motive? 3/8 notes and a downbeat? Yeah, so he liked that one a lot. But it's important that we pay attention, again, as part of an ensemble, to the dynamic scheme in a place like this, because as a group, how we consciously do dynamics makes it even more of an impact. So again, at 43, where we take over, we are piano, but our line is ascending. So if we're not careful, just because it gets higher on our violins, it's going to sound louder. But it's not marked, and it's important for building this long, long crescendo. So I like to think about actually a slight decrescendo in 46, and actually being about pianissimo starting 47, right where the crescendo is marked. And then I mark, actually in my part, I pace that crescendo so that I don't get too loud too soon. So I'm only mezzo piano by about bar 51. And then maybe 4 bars later, I'm mezzo forte. And then they have lots of room to make it kind of a big crescendo the last few bars into letter A for the fortissimo. So the concepts of rhythm and dynamics are always important, but they're even more important when you're part of an orchestra, which to me is one of the most fun places to be. I hope that this tutorial helps give you some success, and by what I mean by success is growth, regardless of the result of your audition. To me, that's the goal, is growth. So, I wish you success, meaning growth, as a violinist and a person.